We'll get to the Afghanistan stuff in just a second. I just feel obligated to say something that might be a little bit hard to hear. Obviously, you remember the Trump indictment in New York City. And I'm getting a sense of something. In fact, I got a sense of it right away, almost right away, as soon as the indictment was announced, and then he got indicted. I'm getting a sense of something. I'm getting a sense that the right is under the impression that this is so ridiculous that it's going to go away and it's not going anywhere. And don't get me wrong, it is beyond ridiculous. It is beyond unjust and wrong what they're doing to Trump. Ridiculous charges. The whole thing is absurd. So it is ridiculous. But Donald Trump is in very serious trouble, legal trouble. Not because he did anything wrong, because we have parts of this nation now, New York City being one of those, that are wholly controlled by communists at every level. This is why I warned you a long time before he was indicted in New York. I came on here and I warned you, Trump's in very serious trouble in New York. And why did I tell you that? Because at no level, when you're in New York City, you're in Manhattan, if you start at the bottom rung of political power, at no point when you start climbing that ladder will you encounter anyone who will or even can stop the communists at the bottom from tearing Trump apart. If you're sitting there telling me, oh, he didn't do anything wrong. Okay, that's not the point. You don't understand. Why are you telling me that? I know he didn't do anything wrong. That means nothing. Not in a communist-run area that wants to burn him. Set aside what he did or didn't do. That doesn't matter. I need you to tell me who's going to stop it. You know Congress can't stop it, right? Alvin Bragg is going to have a change of heart. Is that what you think? Do you think the full-blown communist Letitia James, the state AG of New York, do you think she's going to step in and stop it? Kathy Hochul, governor? Eric Adams, the mayor? Who's going to stop it? Oh, Jesse, but if it goes to trial, he'll be fine. Do you have any idea the percentage of Democrats versus Republicans in Manhattan where that trial is going to be held? Over 80% Democrats. Do you know that Democrats in this country do genuinely believe Donald Trump is Adolf Hitler? You think a jury of 12 is going to be made up of anyone but communist apparatchiks who've been dying to throw Trump against the wall forever? Donald Trump is in serious legal trouble. And we haven't even gotten to the DOJ where he'll be tried in D.C. Maybe even Georgia as well. Atlanta's the same thing here. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this because I really feel like our side kind of shrugged its shoulders and moved on here and just kind of thought, oh, well, these charges are crazy. And even some of the liberals are saying charges are crazy. That's ridiculous. I think Donald Trump's going to jail. I do. And that's a freaking horrible place to be. But I do. It's a late-stage republic. That's the way it goes in a late-stage republic. Have you ever heard of the Servile Wars? The Servile Wars. There were 3 of them. 3 Servile Wars. Oh, don't worry, we'll get to all the news of the day and Anheuser-Busch and the GOP being low T. And we got all kinds of stuff coming up tonight. Just bear with me, I'm going somewhere with this. So in Rome, as in most historical societies, they had slaves. Many, 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 many slaves. Lots of them. They kept beating up foreign armies when they fought, and when you lost a war back then, you, your wife, your kids, oftentimes taken into slavery. And Rome began to really expand its slave population, which, if you are okay with slavery, which I hope you're not, but if you're okay with slavery, pretty good business if you're a rich guy in Rome. You got a bunch of unpaid laborers out there working your fields, doing whatever you want. But there's always, in any society that's heavy on slaves, there's always a safety concern. Because you are worried, understandably, that all these people you treat like crap, people you own as if they're cattle, what if they get upset? What if they all join together? There's a lot of them. Start fighting back. In Rome, they did. They had a servile war. Eventually, Rome beat them up. Won. They had a second servile war. Eventually, Rome beat them up and won. Then along comes the Third Servile War. You maybe have seen a movie about it, or at least you've heard of it. Spartacus, you know who Spartacus was? He was a real person. He was a slave, a gladiator slave. The gladiators were slaves, mostly. So he was well-trained. Turns out the guy had a knack for military command. They think he may have been a military commander prior to being captured and being made a slave. Either way, he starts kicking these Romans around. Pretty good. Winning some battles, doing some things he shouldn't be able to do. But eventually, Rome, they get Pompey Magnus, they get Crassus, they get a bunch of generals together, and they figure out a way to put down this slave rebellion. The Third Servile War is over. But Rome understood something at this point in time. Okay, we have all these slaves. We're not giving up our slaves, but these people keep rebelling. Every so often now, they keep rebelling. How are we going to stop this? What are we going to do to make sure there's no Servile War Part 4? Let's just make sure it stops at 3. Huh? What are we going to do? So here's what they did. You ever heard of the Appian Way? All you need to know is there's Rome, the city of Rome, and then there's Capua, another major city in Rome. Consider them the 2 major cities in the Roman Empire. All right, and from Rome to Capua, there's a superhighway. Think about the superhighway near where you live, the main thoroughfare where everyone drives. That's called the Appian Way, 130 miles between Rome and Capua. At the end of the Third Servile War, the Romans had 6,000 of the slave rebels captive. And what they chose to do was crucify each one of those slaves along the Appian Way. So every so often, I mean, think about that, 6,000 people, it's only 130 miles. That's a whole lot of crucifixion. Think what you'd think going up and down the Appian Way as people lay there. Remember, it takes days to die when you're crucified. Days of suffering, misery, groaning, crying. Think what that sounded like. Think what that looked like. 6,000 crucifixions. And there was never a 4th Servile War. Message received, right? This is an ugly story. It's a true story. It's an ugly story. But there's a great lesson in there. And lessons are important, are they not? Because the low-T GOP has never understood things like lessons. They certainly don't understand things like history. They're too afraid of everything. The media, themselves, winning at something. Just a quick recap on last week. Don't worry, we're not going to go over the whole thing. Anheuser-Busch, biggest beer place out there. They'd hire some wingnut nutball as their vice president of marketing. Of course, like every other corporation who brings in the psycho-communist liberal white woman, she immediately starts tearing apart the company and finds some tranny, Dylan Mulvaney, some dude pretending he's a chick, and they slap his face on some Bud Light cans. You remember all this. Well, what happened after that? What happened was, unlike anything really I think I've seen the right get angry before. I've seen the normal people and the right get angry together before, but I don't think I've ever seen normal people and the right get angry and punish somebody. I'm not friends with political people. I don't hang out with political people here in Texas. I hang out with normal people. All of my neighbors, they were all talking about what Bud Light did. I'll never buy it again. I'm done with Bud Light. Screw Bud Light. No, I'm not drinking that beer. This is something that ticked off the masses. This is something that got legs. Finally, this endless tranny activism, finally they'd pushed too far. And they pushed in a way that gave people an easy way to fight back. So there's plenty of beer options, right? I have to buy Bud Light, buy whatever I want. You buy whatever beer you want. So people said no. I had friends of mine, neighbors, they practically had a Bud Light party just to get rid of all the Bud Light they had. We got to get it out of the house, never buying it again. And what was the result of all that? $5 billion lost in market share by Anheuser-Busch. And unlike other right-wing protests, this one wasn't stopping. Normally the right gets bored after about 15 minutes. They're not bored. They're winning. They're winning so badly that Anheuser-Busch did something unbelievable. They put out a statement. Now, it wasn't an apology. They wanted you to think it was an apology. But it was this long, rambling statement by their CEO talking about how we love the military and first responders and America, and we didn't want to divide. So, of course, they didn't apologize because then the tranny mob would have came for them. But you all know what that was. That was a week of dead silence, and then they put out that statement, these people are panicking. And so now, we on the right, we've had no cultural wins, none. You haven't, I haven't. I know there's been good legislation passed, and we're doing things like Roe versus Wade, but I'm talking about actually moving the cultural needle back our way. So we're starved for this. We've never actually dug in our heels and said, no more. This is where it stops. And now we have this gigantic corporation on their heels, practically on their knees, begging for mercy. And now we have our chance to make an example of Anheuser-Busch, to leave them like a dead carcass on the side of the road, to leave them crucified along the Appian Way. And keep in mind, maybe this talk makes you uncomfortable. It's critically important that the rest of corporate America realizes we're done being waterboarded with the rainbow colors. We're done with it. We must punish them so the next corporation, when they have a board meeting and crazy liberal white woman walks in and says, we need to tranny up the cookies, they say, no, you're fired. We're not going through what Anheuser-Busch went through. Sit down and shut up, liberal white woman. That's what we needed. But, the low-T GOP, they are what they are. You see, they're staring at a win. They certainly could never deliver a win. They couldn't risk delivering a win for you or me. So what do we get? Daily Beast. GOP quietly backs off attacking Bud Light because a major donor is running things over there. In fact, the National Republican Congressional Committee put out and then swiftly deleted a direct attack on Bud Light, whose parent company donated nearly $500,000 to its candidates in the most recent election cycle. You see, you were on the verge of maybe achieving a cultural win that would finally give us some relief from this endless corporate liberal activism that we have to endure now today. Endless. You can't go anywhere. You can't buy anything now without being barraged by the endless rainbow waves. And finally, we were almost ready to make an example of this gigantic corporation. And the low-T GOP looks at its campaign donations and says, guys, no, what if we lose campaign money, guys? Oh my gosh, stop. This is why I don't call myself a Republican. This is why I am an anti-communist. And this is why we must purge most of these Republicans from local, state, and federal office, because we simply can't win with these people. They're not trying to win. The tranny debate isn't some obscure cultural war that doesn't matter. It's a critical step for them in destroying reality, in destroying young people, destroying families, getting people to admit that the sky is green. How much better would it be if we got money out of politics? Now, let's be clear about this. It's not your mommy's show, it's your daddy's show. We have to live in reality. Money's part of politics. It has always been part of politics, and it always will be. Long before there was a United States of America, Roman senators were being bought off and buying other people off and being bribed. Right down to a tribe electing its new chief. Hey, man, if I give you a couple extra cattle, will you give me your vote? Money's part of politics. That's ugly. That's the reality of it. Now let's talk about what it means, because it has so much to do with why we are where we are as a late-stage republic. Joe Biden, for instance. We'll get into all this stuff that happened in the House today, but Joe Biden, for instance, why do his family members keep getting these huge payoffs from other nations and companies? Gas company in Ukraine, a country here, Chinese CCP. Why? What do you gain from that? Joe Biden doesn't have any money. He's been a senator forever. He's got money, but $165,000 a year he's been making? That's not wealthy. So what do they gain from that? Well, Joe Biden has access to more money. Your money, specifically. My money. So money always plays a part. You saw the House of Representatives. they passed a bill banning men from competing against women in sports. Okay, fine. It's not going anywhere. Obviously, it's going to get shot down. Every single United States senator will shoot it down. And even if they didn't, well, every single Democrat senator, probably half the Republicans, and even if they didn't, Joe Biden would shoot it down. But why is that? Have you wondered why that is? Why is it that the entire Democrat Party is all of a sudden rainbow warriors, when all of them, from Obama to Biden, recently were against even the basic concept of gay marriage on camera? No, it can't happen, but now they don't. Why? Money. The gay lobby is a rich lobby. They command dollars. They command campaign dollars. You go out there and take a step against the LGBTQ demon mob, if you're a Democrat, you might lose your next election. Money matters. You do remember all the Bud Light stuff, right? All the Bud Light stuff? Because we're switching gears to our team. In case you forgot, here's a little snippet. GOP quietly backs off attacking Bud Light. In fact, the National Republican Congressional Committee put out and then swiftly deleted a direct attack on Bud Light, whose parent company donated nearly $500,000 to its candidates. And finally, we were almost ready to make an example of this gigantic corporation. And the low-T GOP looks at its campaign donations and says, guys, no, what if we lose campaign money, guys? Oh my gosh, stop. This is why I don't call myself a Republican. Weird how you haven't heard anything about Bud Light since Monday. I'm sure it's just a coincidence that Jeff Miller is a Bud Light lobbyist, the big boy Bud Light lobbyist, good friends with Kevin McCarthy, interned with Kevin McCarthy. You see, we were getting ready for a nice little cultural win, leave one of these corporations dead on the side of the road for, again, waterboarding us with all this trans filth. And the GOP stepped in for money and put a stop to all of it. Money always comes down to that, always does. I remember that story I told you a long time ago? I know we have a bunch of new viewers and we're grateful for that. So let me tell you a little story about me. So you know I ran for office, ran for Congress. I was fresh out of the Marines. I'd never been involved in politics. I got mad about what Barack Obama was going to do to the country. I ran for Congress in a kind of a purple district, a blue district. There was an incumbent Democrat, but maybe it could be one. Decided to run for Congress out of nowhere. And as you can imagine, I know you're going to find this shocking, I was far to the right as a candidate, far to the right. And the establishment, backed by John McCain, put in a state senator against me. Of course, he was going to be a good boy, right? And I blew his doors off. Well, then I'm done with the primary, and now I need to raise money because Gabrielle Giffords was my opponent. She had tons of money, and she's attacking me on TV, and I need to raise money. And all the standard GOP donors froze me out, didn't give me a dime as I sat there broke, getting savaged on TV. This is not sour grapes, by the way. Best thing that ever happened to me. I'm just telling you how money works in politics. I had endorsed John McCain's primary opponent against him, so John McCain did not care for me at all. Then I get a meeting with him in Washington, D.C. Got back there doing some other stuff. I get word he wants to meet me. Okay, let's go meet. Sat down, talked with him. He was, rest in peace, a military guy, crass, straightforward in person. And because of that, we ended up getting along very well in that meeting. By the time that meeting was over, John McCain decided that he liked me. And it was still, to this day, one of the most unbelievable things ever. We, as a campaign, we had a P.O. box. Because you can't have the address of the office, all these commie nutballs will come vandalize the place. You have a P.O. box. And that's a place where people can mail checks, mail campaign donations. And so we would go every day. Someone on my staff would go every day and open up the P.O. box and look, and there's never anything in there. There's a check for $5, and you're just screwed. Right after John McCain decided he liked me, the most exciting part of the day was running down to the P.O. box to see all the checks. Checks from everywhere. People I'd never met. People I'd never talked to. Like that. Light switch got turned on. That's how politics works. It's an ugly bit of business, isn't it? Why do you think this Jamal Bowman, why do you think he's such a weird person anyway, one of these loud, annoying communists, but why do you think he's so committed to protecting TikTok?
On TikTok, you have been outspoken against a ban. Is there anything that you could learn about what the Chinese have access to, what they're doing with it, that would prompt you to support a ban?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen any evidence of Chinese espionage or Chinese...
The intel or anything.
Yeah, I haven't seen... There hasn't been like a top secret congressional briefing on what China is doing with TikTok. We've never had that. At the same time, Facebook, in real time, ignored Russian interference in our 2016 elections. Like, that happened. That's a fact.
I bet you, if you look through the FEC, that's where you go to find campaign donations, and all this stuff is public. I bet you after the next election cycle, or maybe even this past one, if you did some digging through the FEC files, you would find some very interesting campaign donations to a Mr. Jamal Bowman. That's why all of a sudden you go on these PR tours. That's the state of politics. And when you get to a late stage republic, it gets ugly. But you voted for this isn't just for you and me. You voted for this also applies to Democrats in big cities. You see, we talked about it before. We're going to bring this up often because it's one of the great modern examples of you voted for this. What's happening in Chicago? Chicago has been ravaged by crime for years now. And they were so ravaged by crime, they ran to the polls and they got rid of Lori Lightfoot. You suck, Lori. And then the worst neighborhoods, the neighborhoods with the most crime in Chicago, ran to the polls and voted for this insane open jail nut job, Brandon Johnson, who's going to take Chicago from being a bad place to being a living freaking hell. And I'm supposed to look at all these videos of the rioting in Chicago and rioting in the Loop and assaults and murders. And I'm supposed to look at all these videos. And I know I'm deep down supposed to feel some sort of sympathy. Oh, there's poor people in Chicago. I'm sorry, I don't anymore. I don't feel any sympathy at all. You voted for this. Time and time and time again, you voted for this. Oh, Jesse, they don't know any better. Really? Everyone has a cell phone. Everyone today. Rich people, poor people, people on welfare have cell phones hooked up to the internet. There's a couple clicks of a button. I can go look here in Texas. I can go look and find out everything I need to know about the candidates running for office in Chicago. So if you don't care enough to pick up your phone and do a little research and vote differently, why am I supposed to care when your neighborhood turns into hell? I don't care anymore. You voted for this. I don't care. By the way, I don't care that they're losing Walmart too. These communities are a disaster. They won't stop looting Walmarts and other big businesses, by the way. And so these businesses, they can't afford losses like this. You just pack it up and leave, and then you run to the camera and you point fingers everywhere except for the mirror.
And Walmart, you should be absolutely ashamed of yourselves. You are the reason that our communities lack the investment that they have. We should not have to go out of our communities to find jobs. We should not have to go out of our communities to get medicine. We should not go out of our communities to be able to shop. We should be able to do all of this in our communities.
Right here.
We deserve to be able to shop,
Yes, sir.
work,
Yes.
play
Yes.
in our own communities.
In agreement.
You deserve exactly what you're getting now. Today's tax day. We'll get to that in a moment. But like me, for instance, I could look out the window of the studio right now and see my car on fire. And I wouldn't be happy. I'd be upset, but I wouldn't probably yell or scream or throw anything. It would be all, well, let's call the fire department. I guess the insurance company gonna need a new car. I'd be okay with it. But if I ordered a double cheeseburger right now, really hungry, I ordered a double cheeseburger, and they brought it to me while I'm right. And they put it down in front of me, and I opened it up, and they forgot to put cheese on the burger. This has happened to me before. You'd see the blood vein in my head just coming out. It reveals my priorities. Misplaced, I realize, but priorities. Think about all the things we riot about and complain about and protest about in this country. There are a lot of them, and many of them are very justified. Many of them are crap. It just totally depends. But you know what's wild? You never get a protest, a significant movement of any kind that costs people their jobs in elected office. You never see this overspending. And that's so wild how we as Americans have depersonalized taxes. Because think about this. You're being taxed at what, 25%? 30%? I don't even know what we pay anymore. I just don't know. Just take the money out. But it's a lot. So that means if you worked 9 to 5 today, you put in an 8-hour day, you dedicated the first 2 hours of your day, 3 maybe, of your day to the federal government. You sat there doing whatever you do, and you worked exclusively for the federal government. Now, if I'm dedicating that portion of my day, and you're dedicating that portion of my day, and you're taking my money, I would like to know a real accounting of what you're doing with it. You better be being real careful with my money that you took from me. And they're taking a lot. Did you know what they took last year? $4.2 trillion out of your pocket. Just for reference, because that's such a big number you don't know, in 2020, they took $2.76 trillion. And look, I'm not pointing fingers here, because I'm not out there rioting in the streets either, but how does that not make us irate? How do we not look at numbers like that of the federal government looking at us like sheep that need to be, what do they call it, shorn, shaven? Whatever they do, and they shave the sheep down. How's that not a big deal to us? I mean, what are we paying for? Well, here's Janet Yellen on the Inflation Reduction Act.
The Inflation Reduction Act is, at its core, about turning the climate crisis into an economic opportunity. Treasury is playing a central role in the Inflation Reduction Act's implementation effort. An estimated $270 billion of the law's investment is delivered via tax incentives.
You worked today for the first 2-3 hours of your day. Yesterday too, tomorrow as well, and you're dedicating that time so the federal government can steal your money and attack oil and gas, which runs the entire planet. They take your money, they attack oil and gas, and they hand your money out to their solar panel friends. And we don't protest. No national outrage, nothing.